An interesting exercise. I don't do it enough in my life, but I know it would instill wisdom in choices that young men make. Imagine the perspective of a grandfather or a much older man commenting on the choices of a young guy. I think sometimes when I know for myself, if I could wind back the clock and advise my younger self, my younger brother, so to speak, on choices he made, I would say, well, you might think twice about goofing off here. You might take this activity a little bit more seriously, or you might want to consider this avenue. So it's a helpful exercise, I think, to try and get in the mindset of what an older man or an alien man in decline would consider valuable, and have that perspective inform some of the choices we make when we're younger, because it's a whole different scorecard, I think, that a man in decline has in front of him versus a young guy. I will tell you a funny story though that has to do with dating. I was when I was in New York City in 2002. I had just arrived, and I was basically came without resources. I had a college degree and some connections, and I had been studying Wall Street. I had been studying investments and stocks and how to price them. And I arrived, and I was trying to get a job. It was after 9/11. There was a very bad job market, and I was had free time, so I was chasing a lot of girls. And we lived in a big Jewish co-op downtown that was built after World War II for refugees, and it was mostly, I lived there with my buddy. We were two young guys, but the whole building was elderly folks who had owned the places for. So we'd ride the elevator up with guys in their 60s and 70s and 80s, women too. And meanwhile, we had the one apartment where there were like girls coming in and out, and there was a lot of sexual activity. And it was a big complex, and no one knew each other. And I was riding up one day in an elevator with this older guy, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Give me." I always ask older men for advice, or like, what's the one thing you would do differently? That's a question I ask a lot of guys who are like 70, 80. And I asked this guy, I said, if you could go back and you were my age, what would you do differently? And he says, Sonny, I'd chase more tail. And I thought, all right, I guess I'm on the right track.
You justified your lifestyle.
I was selective. I chose that piece of wisdom. But I figure, the young guy has an advantage in his youth and his flexibility, lack of encumbrance. So I spend my 20s like all about it, chasing girls. And then there'll be another stage of life where I'll move on. But it's interesting that an old man looking back says, maybe this guy got married very young and has only been with one or two women. And he says, you know what, if I could go back, I'd like to explore females a bit more, perhaps.
So one of the things about this, I want guys to know and to feel is that adapting is not bad. Decline does not have to be bad. And the saving grace is the legacy you're going to leave behind. This whole course has been about living, but we really haven't said anything about dying. And it's really important for us to be able to address this. It's something that can't be ignored, and it's something that maybe would be a touchy subject to discuss with a dad.
Right.
It'd be an uncomfortable subject to discuss with a professor, teacher, boss, or mentor out there because it's so personal. And it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't discuss with a woman. But your own mortality and how to contend with that and deal with that, you never know absolutely when you're going to go.
Right.
And so at some point in your life, you must confront death and discover that it doesn't have to be a fearful, horrible thing. In fact, in ancient times, initiation occurred for young boys to become men through confronting death directly. They thought they were going to die when their dads took them out into the woods and left them to the elements. They thought they were going to die. So they confronted death that early so that they could truly live, unencumbered by the fear of it.
I've heard it said that some psychologists or psychiatrists said that all fears, even the smallest ones, ultimately are a fear of death, and that there's some derivative of the fear that we're going to die, even if there's small things. And I've heard you share that the loss of something significant like a job or resources can feel like a mini death.
Yes.
Almost.
That's right. And that's why initiation was designed to get us over the fear of death in one fell swoop, so that as men, uniquely as men, we can truly live. And so in maintaining your high standards and striving for greatness, that is not to say that you make your standards those only of youth or only of a 20-year-old and judge yourself
Right. That's a
against
good
that
point.
through the lifetime. It's that your standards are judged against yourself based on where you've been in your story of your life. When they look at studies of death and dying, they actually tend to see two camps factor out. There's a small camp of people and a larger one, and the larger one tends to be approaching death with an attitude of regret, fear, resentfulness, disappointment, more common. And the second camp tends to be the folks who have been spontaneous, followed their nose, found a mission in life, did their best with it, had loved, maybe had children, maybe started a business, satisfaction with a career. And now they say, thanks, big guy. It's
Yeah.
been good. I did what I came here to do. It's been good. And I'm ready. I'm okay with it.
That's
And
good.
when that ending comes, you want to be in that smaller second camp because as I think it was it Teddy Roosevelt or that said you found the great devotion. You found the great devotion and you did your best with it as you went through your life, and you'll be okay. A life well lived.
Wow. Well, on that, I want to say thanks, big guy. It's been a good journey.
Thanks, little guy.
And I'll see you on the flip side.